As usual, we're back with another video about the Webtoon creation process, and this time, the focus is on coloring. I've actually explained how I color my Webtoon before, but since that video covered a lot of topics, your focus might have been all over the place. That's why this video is made specifically to focus on the coloring stage only. This time, we'll learn more than just the basics of coloring Webtoons. I'll also explain how to adjust the background with characters, create comedic scenes, and add foreground and background effects for better cinematography. The coloring process will be divided into 3 stages: base coloring, shading, and lighting. Before starting, prepare these tools to make your work easier. To use these tools efficiently, set your line art layer as the reference layer. Once you've done that, make sure your tool is set to refer to the reference layer as well. After that, choose the color you want for the base, then select the area within the line art where you want to apply the color. How is it? Easy, right? This tool will help speed up your base coloring process. When doing base coloring, I first block out the character I want to color. The purpose of this is to make it easier when adding shadows later, such as the character's shadow on the background. After blocking, I'll add the base colors for other areas, such as the skin, eyes, clothes, and hair. I don't think this stage needs much explanation. Just fill in the colors accordingly. Apply base colors to all your line art first. Once that's done, we'll move on to the shading stage. I'm sure everyone has their own way of adding shading, depending on their art style. However, this is the method I use to color my Webtoon efficiently. I use the Lasso Fill tool here. This is a default tool in Clip Studio Paint after the 3.0 update. It helps speed up shading because it allows you to quickly fill large areas with color. Of course, using this tool for shading is a personal preference. My technique for coloring Webtoons is by creating a clipping group of multiply layers inside the color folder. This way, I can shade all parts of the character at once, including the hair, skin, and clothing. I also use a gray base color initially, which I later adjust once all the shading is done for every panel. I use this technique to easily create shading interactions between different base colors, such as skin shadows cast by hair or clothing shadows influenced by skin and hair. This method makes the shading look more natural and seamless, unlike when shading is done on separate layers, which can sometimes make the shadows look disconnected. At this stage, I also directly apply blur effects to areas that need it. The details I don't add during this stage are things like makeup, such as lipstick, eyeshadow, and other small details. These kinds of things will be added after this phase. By the way, I also use a modern technique for creating this Webtoon, where the background is made using 3D applications, so I don't have to color it manually in Clip Studio. Therefore, I won't be explaining how to draw and color the background, but I might give a few tips on how to adjust a 3D rendered background to fit your 2D drawing. Next, once you've done shading for all the panels in your Webtoon, you can copy and paste the previous shading layer and clipping group it to each base color component layer. This way, each base color, skin, clothes, and hair will have its own shading clipping group layer. After duplicating, you can change the shading color to match your color palette. At this stage, I changed the shading color for the character's skin from gray to orange, as you can see in the video. Once the color is changed, the next step is to add details like the makeup for the character. Here, I used an airbrush with a reddish tone on the skin area, as well as adding blush on the cheeks and color to the lips. I also added the airbrush skin tone to the hair and clothing areas of my character. This is just a personal touch, a signature style of my artwork. You can also add highlights to your character's hair according to your own art style. In my case, I use this specific brush to speed up the process. You can download it from the Clip Studio Paint Asset library. After that, you can refine the character's coloring even more by adding detailing. When making a webtoon, consistency is key. My advice is that you don't need to color your webtoon too intricately, making it harder for yourself later on. Keep your webtoon style beautiful but manageable, and make sure you're prepared to stick with that art style from the start of the webtoon to its completion. The webtoon releases 1 episode per week, which is why we are given a 6-day deadline to complete each episode, with 1 day for revisions by the editor. It's a short amount of time for a task I consider quite heavy. That's why make your webtoon visualization according to your preferences, where you can be sure you can complete 1 episode each week. Next, we will move on to the lighting stage, which is actually more fitting to be called the finishing stage. In this phase, we will make adjustments between the character and its background. Additionally, you'll also be setting up the typesetting, such as adding sound effect text, color effects on speech bubbles, and so on. For example, in this phase, I add variety to the long, wide panel by including some flowers. You can search for flower brushes in the Clip Studio asset, and there are so many available there. I can't list them all because I've collected so many brushes that I've forgotten the code of the one I'm using here. Oh, and in the video, you can also see how I adjust the color grading of the background rendered from SketchUp. You can check out my other video where I explain this in more detail. Regarding the addition of flower effects as a finishing touch, you should also pay attention to the composition. Since we read webtoons by scrolling, make sure to place them diagonally or in a zigzag pattern. You need to adjust their placement according to the position of your text balloons as well. Make sure not to place them in areas that will make the text balloons appear cluttered, as this could distract the readers from focusing on the dialogue in your webtoon. In this webtoon, I created a rainy atmosphere, so I made the color palette lean towards cooler tones. The colors used are more dominated by blues and greens. To create raindrops like in the video, you can easily do it with the tools available in Clip Studio. Next, we will add finishing touches to the panel below, which features a full-body character. This is where the blocking we did earlier comes in handy. Copy the blocking layer that was previously created to form the character's shadows. Assume the light is coming from the right, so the shadows fall on the left. After that, add a gradient to make the appearance look more beautiful. You can easily add lighting using the gradient tool, so you don't have to manually apply light with an airbrush as you usually would. Next, to enhance the entrance of the character introduction, I added some flower petals here. Make the flower petals look random, but still have a balanced composition, not blocking the character and not overwhelming the screen. Also, choose colors that match the current tone. I used mint color because it's used in the flowers and their shadows, making everything look more harmonious. Next, you can apply the same finishing to each panel you've created by adjusting the lighting through adding gradients. If you have a similar case, such as repeating scenes, you can copy and paste to maintain consistency. For example, I copied the library background to the panel above to ensure the scene remains consistent throughout. If your background contains materials that can reflect objects, don't forget to draw their reflections as well. The method is simple. Just copy and paste your character and adjust the reflection on your background accordingly. Next, I'll show you how to create a panel using foreground and background effects. For example, like the panel where Claire places the book, the focus should remain on Claire, so we will blur the objects in front and behind her. Make the objects in front darker by adding shading with the multiply layer. This way, it appears darker and the focus stays on the character. To apply the blur effect, you can use the blur tool or the Gaussian blur effect available in Clip Studio. To avoid the hassle of blurring the line art and color separately, you can duplicate both layers and merge them before applying the blur. Next, add a white gradient to create a sense of depth between the objects. Here, we are simulating a camera placed on a bookshelf, capturing Claire from that angle. Next, you can add any remaining details that you feel are missing. For example, I added extra strands of hair to the character to enhance the overall look. A trick for creating random text that you can add to a character's book. If the text inside the book is just filler and not relevant to the story, you can use this method. We'll create a new material that looks like random text. I'll make a custom brush that isn't actually readable text, but simply gives the illusion of writing. The newly created brush will be used to make it look like text inside a book. Easy, right? I do this because sometimes I don't know what to write when a character opens a book that isn't actually relevant to the story. So this is my way of handling it, since readers usually can't read it anyway, and often they don't even focus on the book the character is reading. Next, we'll try creating a comedic scene. Here, I'll make a comedy scene in a panel featuring chibi characters. We'll decorate the background to give this panel a cute and funny impression. You can start by choosing a bright background color with high saturation. I added a jaggy effect to emphasize Grace startling Claire. Next, use the borderline tool to outline the white jaggy shape. Then, you can decorate it further by adding patterns of your choice. You can find these patterns by searching for pop art in the Clip Studio Paint asset library. You can add dot effects or notice stickers to create a surprising impact. These elements will help enhance the comedic tone of the scene and make it feel more lively and engaging for the readers. You can also adjust the border color of your panels. I changed it from black to a color that blends better with the comedic background. Additionally, make the panel lines thicker to emphasize the scene's playful and exaggerated tone. This can help the panel stand out more and give it a stronger visual impact. Additionally, you can add an extra outline to the chibi characters to make them stand out more. Use the borderline tool available to make this process easier and ensure that the characters pop against the background. This will help emphasize their cuteness and make the scene even more playful. If you feel the panel is still too empty, you can add more effects in the background. Consider adding effects outside the main background to enhance the fun and lively vibe. This will help make the scene feel more dynamic and playful, further supporting the comedic atmosphere. Next, change the dialogue text to a more comedic font and adjust the color to make it more harmonious with the scene. Also, modify the speech balloon by adding a thicker outline so it stands out more from the background. This will help make the dialogue clearer and fit better with the playful tone of the panel, creating a more impactful character. Introduction. Instead of introducing a character with a full background, it's better to present them with a large, focused shot and a minimal or abstract background. Design the background to enhance the character's introduction and direct attention to them. For example, you can add decorative elements like flowers at the edges of the panel to create a more visually appealing and engaging introduction. You can also add a special panel that contains the character's name or details. To make it visually appealing, decorate the edges with stylish elements that match the overall theme of your webtoon. This helps make the character introduction more engaging and memorable for readers. Those tips will be the closing remarks for this video. I think that's all the tips and tricks you can use when coloring your webtoon. I hope you find them helpful. See you in the next video.